Hey there. You clicked on the video, which means, I'm assuming you already are somewhat familiar with the topics we're discussing. And I'm going to explain why they should be more intertwined and how some might be overusing their VTTs at the expense of the overall gaming experience. I'll begin by defining both, so we're all starting with the same information. A virtual tabletop, VTT, is a digital platform designed to allow different users access to a virtual space, typically used for tabletop role-playing games. At their most basic level, a VTT provides a digital online game board or virtual space for gaming. The greatest benefit of a VTT is its ability to connect players from around the globe. VTTs are also typically able to offer helpful organization tools for game masters that can speed up a lot of the busy work that can bog down gameplay. Virtual tabletops may also provide dice rollers, but in-person games using a VTT would typically prefer physical dice. The best of VTTs offer at least some integration with the rule systems for the games you're playing. They might include character sheets, stat blocks for monsters, equipment, spells, and combat automation in the form of keeping track of turn order and so on. But those perks aren't even necessary. The virtual table could be used to no greater extent than you would a physical in-person table. And I don't know about you, but my kitchen table doesn't automate my combats or roll my dice. You can even still use physical books while playing with a VTT, with no automation whatsoever. The VTT simply allows different players to connect and see maps or other visual representations required for gameplay. Another equally valid use for a VTT is when they're used for in-person games. A VTT can free up the need for physical maps and game pieces such as miniatures and terrain, instead using digital representations. It's for this reason I would use a VTT for in-person games as well. I enjoy their endless versatility for battle maps and tokens. I've been collecting miniatures since 1980, starting with this Renator box set. And I can tell you, no matter how long you've been collecting these little metal nuggets, and no matter how many you hoard, you'll never have enough. But with a VTT, you can simply copy-paste duplicate tokens and craft as many new ones as needed. You'll never be without the exact piece or quantity you require. Also, I just said little metal nuggets. The reason I still have my miniatures from the 80s is that, for the most part, unless you get some Star Frontiers minis that fell victim to lead rot, these things are made to last. I'm not convinced anyone will still have their resin minis in 40 years. Also, with digital assets, you don't need to curl up in a ball every night crying about how all of your priceless vintage miniatures are going to end up in a landfill after you die. Oh wait, I think I may have said too much. Meanwhile, theater of the mind refers to a style of play where the game is primarily conducted through verbal descriptions and imagination, rather than using props like maps, miniatures, or terrain. In this approach, the game master describes the environment, characters, and events in vivid detail, and the players use this base information to visualize the scenes and actions in their minds. This can often be far more immersive and offer much more flexibility to participants. Theater of the mind games often lean into storytelling and descriptive narration from the GM. While maps and props also require additional descriptive input from the GM, Theater of the Mind relies almost entirely on the GM's ability to set scenes, describe actions, and convey the atmosphere while players interpret that information on their own. This can reward gamers with a more flexible and dynamic experience, as the lack of physical constraints encourages more creativity at every level of play. Theater of the Mind can also offer a much more spontaneous gaming experience. The GM can quickly change scenes, introduce new elements, or adjust the environment without needing to rearrange or prepare physical materials. As cool as dungeon tiles look in pictures, they're a lead weight on your game's pace. For this reason, I prefer erasable battle maps with a minimal amount of terrain pieces, if any at all. Theater of the Mind also encourages players to engage more deeply with their characters in the narrative. It also emphasizes dialogue, character interactions, and personal choices over tactical positioning and movement. The biggest drawback for Theater of the Mind gaming is the barrier it might initially present to new or shy gamers. Overall, every form of collaborative artistic expression can be a very intimate affair, and TTRPGs are no different. A battle map and some miniatures offer new or timid players something to distance themselves from becoming too deeply vulnerable at the gaming table. However, Theater of the Mind requires all participants to open themselves up on a level not everyone might be comfortable with. It's not too complicated, really. Some players might excel in communication and social interactions, while others not so much. And really the point of this video isn't to describe VTTs or tell you how great they can be. I'm also not here to tell you how rewarding theater of the mind play can be. What's on my mind now is the need to explain why those two should be fully integrated together, and why some users of VTTs might be overusing them. Back in the 80s, we'd all huddle around a small hexagonal table in our buddy's dimly lit basement. I didn't have a lot of miniatures yet, maybe less than 100, and our erasable battle map was only 24 by 24 inches. I still have it around here somewhere. I'm telling you, those things last. Given our limited space and resources, most of the time we played theater of the mind. It was really only for the complicated battles and tactics that we pulled out the battle map and minis. This is how miniatures ended up being such a prominent aspect of the hobby, as TTRPGs were born from miniature wargaming. I only began using a VTT a couple years ago. I use Fantasy Grounds, and I have a video planned in the future describing its strengths and weaknesses. Now, here's some important advice for you that I learned. A VTT offers so much that I fell into the trap of overusing it. Suddenly, I was creating maps for everything, no matter how small or inconsequential. It's like I forgot how to play theater of the mind at all because I didn't need to. Here's all these maps. But after a while, I began realizing that as cool as it was to have all these virtual maps and tokens for literally everything, these also became a barrier to our imagination. What at first seemed like an amazing tool to open up the game to limitless possibilities eventually turned into a crutch. The farther we strayed away from balancing our sessions with theater of the mind, the more limited our games became. And that's entirely the opposite intended effect. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because every single location encounter can be represented with maps and tokens doesn't mean you should do it. If that's your goal, you're overusing your virtual tabletop. Don't think of a VTT as a video game. VTTs can automate a lot, nearly everything, but that doesn't mean they should. It would be cool if every player had physical copies of the game rules you're using, but that isn't even necessary. They could use PDFs. And in the case of most VTTs, the players will likely have access to the GM's resources. I know at least in Fantasy Grounds, my players can access and read every book I've made available to them from my account. So if you're using a VTT, embrace the amazing benefits they can offer, but don't overuse them with expectations that they can or should do everything. Theater of the mind is an important gaming skill that I'm worried may die out the more we lean on virtual resources. As our world becomes increasingly digital, new players may begin to expect virtual gaming to duplicate a video game experience. This is obviously the direction the official WotC D&D VTT is headed, and that would be poisonous to the hobby. I believe there's a happy middle ground, and as long as we maintain balance, we can still benefit from the best of both worlds. As always, I'm your friend and host, Atten, here at We Love TTRPGs. The YouTube algorithm and I both appreciate it when you like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks for watching.